So today, for the first installment, we're going to be talking about Blackamoor Jewelry. Now, Blackamoor Jewelry is rare antique jewelry that had its origins in 16th century Venice in the Italian peninsula area. But before we really get into Blackamoor Jewelry, we want to talk about what this term Blackamoor means. Now, Blackamoor is a derivation of the word Moor, and the term Moor was derived from the Latin term Moris. So, Moris originally only referred to the indigenous Berber tribes who occupied northern Africa. When you go through present-day Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Mauritania, their oldest descendants were the Berber tribes. And even now, Berber is the language spoken amongst the common people in these countries. However, over time, it was used to apply to all African Muslims, and in some places, all Africans. So that's why you get the country's name of Morocco, of Mauritania. There are still vestiges of this Latin word, Moris. So, in history, we always have a debate when Africans exceed the accomplishments of Europeans, whether we're talking about the Egyptians or we're talking about the Ethiopians. In this case, we're talking about the Moors, who had an old history and who conquered huge parts of Europe. So when you go through the average European historian, they are going to Arabize or even Europeanize who the Berbers were. Now we know that Northern Africans are, in their melanin content, lighter skinned than sub-Saharan Africans. That does not make them any less African. Just like what they call the swarthiness of the Italians doesn't make them any less European. So with the same rationale, their lighter skin does not make the Berbers any less African. And I want to add that after thousands of years of invasion of foreign powers such as the Europeans, the Arabs, even the Germanic tribes, Northern Africans are lighter than they were thousands of years ago. So we have to remember that. But when you study the Moors and the Berbers, let's not get it mistaken. These were African people in their culture, in their history, and even in their linguistic family. And all historians know this, whether they want to present it any other way. We could really talk for hours about the Moors, their accomplishments, the imprint they put on the world, the empire, how they saved Europe from the quote-unquote Dark Ages, how European aristocrats sent their children to Spain, which was ruled by the Moors for 800 years, to learn. And this is what brought them out of the Dark Ages. I could give a whole nother documentary about that. But right now, I want to focus on the fact that Europeans had been dealing with Moors for centuries. And by the 16th century or the 1500s, what was going on was that the Moorish pirates were ruling the Mediterranean. They were raiding many European cities that had been established on the Mediterranean coast, in particular Italy. And Venice was the biggest power in Italy at the time. Some scholars even propose that Blackamoor Jewelry had its origins in Italian coastal dwellers making it as amulets to ward off the quote-unquote evil that came with the Moorish pirates. Now, I found that funny and very interesting because it had gotten so bad that Italians had to create amulets. However, when this jewelry made its way to Venice, it took on the level of a sign of affluence and power. And what I really find interesting, and I think this is the point that I really wanted to make, is that in the 16th century, where the transatlantic slave trade was beginning to really pick up steam and really beginning to be the economic power in the world, that in Europe you had people and rich people, political figures, merchants, people that ran a society wore these black people as signs of influence and power. And so I think we really have to look at the contradiction of the demonization and the demeaning of Africans on one hand, and the worship or the praise of black people in the other, in the same continent. How could these Italians who raped and pillaged Africa, who took part in the transatlantic slave trade, how could they then wear these beautiful pieces, these very expensive jewelry pieces of black people in all their splendor? How did they reconcile these two opposites within themselves? And I think it's the love, hate, worship relationship that Europeans have always had with Africans. They want to worship us, enslave us, demean us, and be us all at the same time. And we see this constantly in the history of Europeans depicting Africans. Blackamoor Jewelry is really a testament of the awe that Africans inspired in Europeans since the time of the Greeks. Herodotus, the supposed Greek father of philosophy and history, described the Ethiopians as the tallest, the most handsome, and the longest lived of men. In stories of Prester John, a mythical Christian Ethiopian king, were common folklore in Europe. Let's not forget about the thousands of paintings of the Black Madonna and Child that have existed in both the Catholic and Orthodox churches from their inception, which the Vatican still has in their records. So the idea of black being beautiful really was only new to African Americans, those that were stolen of their identity. Europe have always been endeared with Africans, have always considered Africans as beautiful. I have never seen a people that hated another people turn around and make fine jewelry of the people that they hated. This doesn't even make sense. We would only make fine jewelry out of that which we worship, out of that which we held sacred. And the reality is that the black man, woman, and child has always been found beautiful and sacred by the Europeans. To this very day, Blackamoor Jewelry is considered some of the rarest, the best craftsmanship, and because of that, Blackamoor Jewelry is some of the most expensive handcrafted jewelry that you're going to be able to find. However, us as African Americans, we don't even know about this jewelry. I was surprised when I found out about Blackamoor Jewelry. Is the best kept secret in the jewelry world. And while we're spending millions of dollars on diamonds, they're spending millions of dollars of things that look exactly like me and you. And I find that empowering. And I think you should too. Now, it's really not my place to tell you how to feel about Blackamoor Jewelry. I know it's a sensitive topic, and many Africans have expressed extreme distaste for it. Reason being, they say it's racist and offensive in nature, similar to blackface and Sambo statues. But in my opinion, while, blackface and Sambo statues were purposely created to mock and demean Africans, Blackamoor Jewelry when you look at it, its price, its beauty, and its rarity shows that at the very least, Europeans didn't truly believe all the demeaning image of Africans that they put out there. It's hard for me to think of a person in their lowest light and their highest light at the same time. So when I look at Blackamoor Jewelry, what I really see is this more historical precedent of Europeans really being enthralled with Africans. This type of idea predates the African slave trade. Before this, Africans were held in high honor around the world, and I think the Blackamoor Jewelry really points this out. And at the most, it shows that, they have always seen us as beautiful, exotic, and rare. That our black skin, full features, and kinky hair have always qualified us as the most handsome of men and women. And when we look at Blackamoor Jewelry, this is someone's caricature of black people. And this is why it has diamonds and rubies and emeralds, because you have value, black man. You have value, black woman. And even the European testified to this by making you into fine and exquisite jewelry.